Welcome everyone. Sorry for the delay. I hope that it's worth it because you have most of you have packets of information that we wanted to make available to you. First, let me introduce Angelica Salas, Executive Director for CHIRLA, which is the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles. She will then introduce our other guests. Angelica.
So thank you very much for joining us this morning. We are gathered here at our offices at the request of some of the families impacted by the actions of Miramonte School and their attorneys. As many Angelinos, we have witnessed the horrible details of what has happened at Miramonte School unfold from afar. We knew that many of the parents impacted are Latino and immigrants. We have been brought into this unfortunate situation because many parents who have information to share about the case or who have children who are victims of the situation are fearful that coming forward might have negative impacts on their family's immigration status. Their fear is not unfounded. As you know, Miramonte School and its surrounding neighborhood is patrolled and in the jurisdiction of the Los Angeles County Sheriff. The Los Angeles County Sheriff has formal agreements in the form of Secure Communities and 287G to collaborate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement of DHS at the jails and in the booking process. We are here to offer support for these families and let them know that CHIRLA and many other Latino and civil rights organizations will work arduously to ensure that there is sensitivity on the issues of immigration status throughout this investigation. We will also avail them of any protection available to them through our immigration laws. We are here also to call Sheriff Lee Baca to give an affirmative statement that immigration status will not in any way be a barrier to full protection for these families. And finally, we ask that any person who has any information that can help with this investigation or whose child is a victim to come forward and to know that we will be vigilant in ensuring that immigration issues are protected within this criminal investigation. Brevemente en español, mi nombre es Angélica Salas, estoy aquí con CHIRLA a petición de las familias que han sido impactados por la situación en Miramonte y también por sus abogados. Como muchos de ustedes y otros angelinos, nosotros vimos desde lejos muchos de los horribles detalles que estaban ocurriendo, las acciones que estaban ocurriendo en la escuela Miramonte. Nosotros también sabemos que muchos de los padres son latinos y inmigrantes. Hemos sido traídos a esta situación porque muchos de los padres que tienen información sobre el caso o que sus hijos son víctimas en esta situación tienen miedo de traer esa información a la luz porque tienen miedo de que haya consecuencias negativas en torno a su situación de inmigración. Esta situación, desafortunadamente para estas familias, su miedo tiene peso y el motivo es porque la escuela de Miramonte y su alrededor está en la jurisdicción del sheriff de Los Ángeles, que tiene acuerdos con el Departamento de Inmigración. Pero nosotros le queremos decir a las familias y a las familias que van a hablar que nosotros como CHIRLA y muchas otras organizaciones de derechos civiles y que protegen los derechos de los latinos vamos a trabajar duro para que su estatus migratorio sea protegido a través de toda esta investigación y que también si tienen cualquier protección bajo las leyes de inmigración que también se les va a proveer. Le llamamos también al sheriff Lee Baca que haga un pronunciamiento afirmativo que va a proteger a estas familias y su estatus migratorio durante el curso de esta investigación. Finalmente, le hacemos una gran petición a nuestra comunidad que ha sido impactada. Si usted tiene miedo por su estatus migratorio, por favor, traiga la información hacia adelante. Si sus hijos fueron víctimas en esta situación, le pedimos que traiga esa información, que nosotros vamos a trabajar duro para que su estatus migratorio no sea una barrera para que sus niños reciban la justicia que merecen. Muchas gracias. I will now pass over the rest of the press conference to attorneys Jessica Dominguez and Gregory James Owen. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm attorney Jessica Dominguez, and I'm here to be the voice for the voiceless. Although we only represent eight of the families that have been involved in this scandal, most of these families represent a lot of families out there who would not speak to authorities because of their immigration status. Today, you will hear from a father who, although has so much evidence as to these crimes, refuses to speak to any authorities because he is truly afraid of getting deported. We are here to ask Sheriff Lee Baca not only to give us the assurance that you will not be asking for any type of immigration status, but to assign a specific officer who is very familiar with certifications of U visas. That is of the utmost importance for every single parent who finds himself in this situation. And not only that, if the authorities can certify these U visas, not only would they be able to protect themselves, but also children who have been victims who are undocumented. How sad is that the families are not speaking up because they're afraid of getting deported? This could be resolved by your department assigning an officer who's very familiar with these regulations. We have given the media today a packet including information about the U visa. For U visa certification, you do not need to be done with the investigation. You do not need to act as ICE officers. You need to act as the authority who's investigating these crimes and who should have told his parents about this very long ago. That is the request that we're making today, and as I said later on, you will hear from a father who's going through this situation. Thank you. Buenos días, estoy aquí representando a las familias que se encuentran en una situación muy difícil. Soy la abogada Jessica Domínguez y estoy aquí para ser la voz para los que no tienen voz. Representamos a 8 familias en este caso, pero algunas de estas familias representan el miedo que existe en este momento en nuestra comunidad porque tienen miedo a ser deportados. Como lo explicó Angélica de Chirla, ustedes saben el problema de comunidades seguras es algo que vemos en las noticias y los medios de comunicación todas las semanas. El miedo que tienen estos padres es real, no es nada inventado. Y hoy van a escuchar de un padre que no se rehúsa a hablar con las autoridades por ese miedo, aunque él tiene muchísima evidencia que se pudo presentar con esta demanda, comprobando que su niña ha sido víctima de esta clase de abuso. No estamos aquí solamente para presentar esto porque ustedes ya escucharon esto en todos los medios, pero estamos aquí específicamente pidiéndole al Sheriff Lee Baca de que tome los pasos necesarios para que no solamente le diga a nuestra comunidad no te vamos a preguntar por tu estatus migratorio. Lo que necesitamos es algo afirmativo que nos diga que va a asignar a un oficial que tenga experiencia en certificar la visa U, porque la visa U es la que puede proteger no solamente a estos padres de ser deportados en un futuro, pero también a aquellos niños que han sido víctimas de esta clase de abuso y que no tienen un estatus migratorio. Como les dije, en unos cuantos minutos vamos a tener un padre que va a compartir con ustedes acerca de este miedo. Y ahora los voy a dejar con el abogado Owen porque él va a hablar acerca de las demandas que ya han sido presentadas. I will now ask Attorney Owen to talk to you about the lawsuits that have already been filed. Thank
you. Good morning. I'd apologize for the late start, but everyone here understands the 405 freeway. Greg Owen. What I'd like to do is I'd like to start with a very important issue that I think needs to get resolved right away. I again saw a sheriff's spokesman last night claim that there are only 23 victims. Indicating, for example, they just found other photos, and he said that all of those other photos really apply to the people they'd already investigated. We know that's not true. The reason we know it's not true is because we have 3 children who have been victimized. We have photos of them with the perpetrator eating the cookies that were sent home. And none of them have been interviewed by either the school or the sheriffs. So 3 of our plaintiffs have not been interviewed. So that makes there at least 27. Now there's a process where we find out who is involved in this. We do a lot of these cases. We do a lot of class actions. In those cases, it's very simple. We get the names and addresses and the last phone number, and we contact every single kid who's gone to that school or been in this perpetrator's class. In that way, people can respond. And I believe if those notifications go out, we'll find that there are many other students. It's a very good point. We know for a fact that there are very many students who have left the area who were victimized by this man. They're living either out of the community or living out of the state. And some of them actually left the country. It's not that hard to find them. We find people all the time without a lot of effort. The next thing I'd like to address is the perpetrator. Bert is an animal, but he's not that much different than many perpetrators. I'm assuming many of you have covered these cases. They're sickening. They never get any better, but some are worse. This particular case I find heinous for a couple of reasons. If you've seen the photographs of the little girls eating the cookies with the semen on top of the cookies and then dripping down on their chins, it made my wife cry, it made me cry. It's unimaginable. But I want you to think how sick this guy was. He took those photographs of the child and then sent them home. And some of these parents framed them and put them on their bookshelves up until this thing occurred, never knowing what the white substance was. I have some, I don't know, if I go up to these exhibits, can you follow them, or should I just sit here?
Stay there.
Oh.
I can help
Can you
you.
also turn that CNN mic towards you a little bit, please, sir?
Okay,
This one?
Yeah.
I see the red one.
Thank you.
So, you know, I will sit here, but at the very end, I want to get one board and show you, okay?
Yeah, can I have the copy turn them in the meantime so that they know what you're referring to?
I don't know if they can reset to show it.
Okay, but.
Yeah, turn it around. Thank you. Pedophiles, let me start back. If you want to become a pedophile and you go online, there are actually articles that tell you the steps you should take. The most important step a pedophile takes to be successful is grooming. And of course, what they do is they choose a weak child, a quiet child, a child who doesn't receive a lot of attention, and then they start their job. What they do is they gain that child's confidence. They comment on the child. They make the child feel special. Then they start giving them presents. And we have photographs up here of the books and the various presents that he gave them. And each one has a note inside, a very personal note. He signs it in ways that would make him look like he's just a wonderful teacher. But then, this guy's really good, because there are only few pedophiles who do what he does, and that is he grooms the families. So what he does is he'll invite himself, or he'll get an invitation to a birthday party. This is a birthday party that shows the little girl, the perpetrator next to the little girl, and the mom sitting next to the little girl. During this entire period of time, he's molesting her daughter. We have many other photos like that, where he's at family functions with many of the kids. And again, you can imagine how the family feels when they realize they invited him into their home and what was happening at school. Please. As I indicated, when he would send these letters to the children, or he would send these gifts, he would always put some sort of note inside. What we've done is we've put at the bottom his postmark to show it was sent by him. And, for example, so how are you? Hope you're having a nice vacation. I'm very happy you're my student. Surely, no teacher could have a nicer, more wonderful girl than you. Thanks again for the presents, cards, and nice things you wrote to me in Spanish. Merry Xmas, Mr. B. At the bottom it says, P.S., how are the babies doing? The babies are Madagascar cockroaches. What you had in the class, I mean, if you've ever seen them, they're about this big. And in some of the photos we have, he has the children bound with their hands behind them. He has them gagged with tape, and he has blindfolds on them. And then he places these cockroaches on their faces and takes photographs of it. So this is during vacation. So during vacation, he'll send, or the summer, he'll send 2, 3, or 4 notes to each of the children, making them feel special and looking forward to going back to class and playing these games with him. Now, what he also does, the reason he said that is he'll pick a special child, and he'll send the cockroaches home for the Christmas break or the summer, which again makes them feel very special, and they bring them back, and that's part of his process. Excuse me. Let's move on. The cards are beautiful. They're childlike. This is one of the cards we have. That's the face of it. Let's move over to the next one. These are a couple of more notes they gave to other children, and one of the girls, he always referred to her as college girl. And my understanding is that no one had been to college in her class. Perhaps nobody had graduated high school. So he gave her confidence and made her feel good because he told her, no, you've got what it takes to go through college. Again, made her feel very special, and she'd do anything he asked. Next, please. So, these are perhaps to me, they're the most disturbing photographs we have thus far. These have been blown up. You can't see the real detail. I won't get up, but if you look at the right side of her chin on the left photograph from your view, you can see the droplet of white liquid. You can also see the white liquid on the cookie, and you can see her legs are spread. These are photographs he took. I believe if not all of the children have these photographs, were given these photographs, or many of them have. Down below, of course, is a photograph with 2 children he was molesting. It was at school, and boy, he's got a wonderful smile there, and I guess they're having a great day. Let's go to the next. This is actually another photo. It's a close-up that he took. For whatever reason, his sick mind determined that he wanted to take that photograph. And again, in one of the books he gave College Girl, oh no, I'm sorry. This one was on the back of the photograph when she was eating the cookie. And again, it was sent home. The parents looked at it and thought, wow, what a nice man to give her a cookie with ice cream on it or something wonderful. And these particular family members did frame it, and they did put it in their living room on a shelf. Oh, I think it's up there. No, let's turn that around. Last. Yes, please. I've just got a couple more. We have many more of these, but I just want to see them. Again, this is in a card for a great. That's not true. This is inside of a very large book he gave one of the children. A beautiful book with insects and things like that. For a great entomologist. Happy insect hunting. Always, Mr. Bennett. That's the face page of the book, and I can tell you that little girl loved that. Another book to another child, same purpose. He's a pedophile.
And
You're
that's why
making
the
them feel
parents
good.
didn't suspect anything because they were always getting gifts and recognizing them. He chose the smart girls and the quiet ones.
Yeah, Jessica makes a very good point. They're very careful in their selection process. They pick the weaker children, the children that sometimes don't get the affection at home, children that are quiet, and he praises them. He makes them feel good. He tells them how beautiful they are, how popular they are. And of course, it gives them something they may not be getting at home or from the other students. Now, on the other hand, there are children who are well-adjusted and very smart, and we ask ourselves, how could he do that to them, number one, and two, why wouldn't they come home and tell their parents? That's a question that every juror asks. It's a question that my wife asks. I think every parent asks. They say, well, if that happened to my child, they would have come home and told me immediately.
Let me say that in Spanish. Y es importante que nuestra comunidad, al ver estos libros, al ver estos regalos, al ver la manera que él iba a visitar estas casas para los cumpleaños y llevaba regalos de esta índole, que se den cuenta que aunque no haya fotos, aunque no hayan hablado con sus niños, si esto existe en el hogar de ellos, regalos por parte de este individuo, ellos deben de buscar ayuda para que esos niños puedan conversar, ya sea con un doctor o con una psicóloga, para que puedan averiguar exactamente en la situación que se encuentran. No ignoren la situación porque nomás piensan que sus niños recibieron regalos, porque esto es evidencia definitiva de niños que sí han sido abusados. Thank you.
Once he's done these acts over a period of time, what happens is, let's go back. Let's talk about why children don't come forward. Again, I've handled many of these cases. I only recall one case where a child actually eventually came forward. Generally, it's a situation where someone figures it out, or another adult or another child reports it. And there are many ways. We had one case where the perpetrator told the children that he would kill their parents and their dog. He would then take the child somewhere and he'd slaughter animals in front of them and tell them this would happen to his family. Some children are just embarrassed. We have a case where children, it was child on child. The older child was continually sodomizing the younger children. He never came forward because he was ashamed that people would call him gay. So I won't go on, but there are a number of reasons, and I'm sure the psychologists have more information on that than I do. The other thing I'd like to address with you is, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor, but I have been dealing with this for over 30 years. And I can tell you this, a victim of this sort of act never gets better. I've never seen one person who's got completely healed from this. Some better than others, and some don't even survive. So what I did is I went back and looked at some of our cases and wrote down the sorts of things that happen to these children. It's an emotional trauma for the most part. In other cases, it's physical trauma. But when the physical injury goes away, of course, what's left are the emotional scars. We've seen a lot of depression, a lot of isolation. These kids want to go into a room, they don't want to come out, they don't want any contact with their family, let alone outside folks. They have a difficulty dealing with other people. It's awkward. They don't trust anyone. Perhaps one parent, maybe another parent, but no one else. Both with the children and the boys, they find it impossible or very difficult to have any sort of normal relationships as they get older. As they get older, and really, I'm going to say 40% of the time, they turn to drugs and alcohol. It gets very serious, but that's what they use to dull the pain. The worst case, of course, is suicide. It happens more often than you think. Okay. All that being said, medical science has come a long way, and with the right psychologist and the right medications, they can lead, some of them can lead a life that is close to normal. So, with that, let's go to questions.
Mr. Owen, I don't want to minimize this. This is a terrible picture to say itself. Speaking, is the defense attorney going to say, all right, prove that it was his semen, and where is the crime in taking pictures with kids with cookies in their mouth and the fact that none of them felt that they had been in any way molested? How do you answer that?
It's a very good question. I personally believe at the end of the day, this guy's going to realize what happened here, and he'll probably admit to doing it. As you know, we do have a blue spoon with his semen in it, and I'm not a criminal attorney, but I really do have a feeling that he'll be prosecuted under perhaps 500 counts, 1,000 counts. I'm not sure. But let's face it, if you take duct tape and you put a kid's arms behind their back, and then you blindfold them, and you put cockroaches on their face, that's pretty much enough to put them in prison. Secondly, what was the second part of your question?
Well, the fact that the children, I mean, if we can believe what the detectives have told us, nobody ever thought, even after they were told, and some of the parents told us the same thing, they never thought that they were being abused in any way.
That's a really good question. It's actually worse than when a child knows it's happening, and I'll tell you why. These children realize along the way, they think they're playing games, but when this comes out in the news media and at home, and they're told what happened to them, and they realize that they were eating cookies with semen, they realize that they were being abused when they're being bound and gagged, what they say to themselves is, why didn't I realize that? Why didn't I do something to stop it? Why didn't I go to my parents? And then they feel tremendous guilt by not doing that. So now they realize it happened to them, and they realize they could have stopped it. So the trauma, the emotional trauma, is oftentimes worse.
What are you
Mr.
alleging
Owen,
is the
Mr.
role of the
Owen.
administration and the school district?
Please say it again.
What are you alleging is the role of the school district and the administration? What are you alleging in the lawsuit?
Certainly negligent supervision. The school system, think of it this way, okay? If you don't take your children to school, you get arrested. I mean, you have to do it. And what happens is, when you take your child to school and drop them off, they lose all of their constitutional rights, literally. That means, for example, if your child has a problem at school, they can take that child, take them into an office, interrogate them without ever talking to a parent. So, with that being said, the school has a duty to ensure their safety. An example of what occurred here that I think is wrong, it's really specific, this guy locked his doors. That violates every single school policy. Yet nobody knew it, nobody stopped it. I mean, I would think in the average school, a principal or an assistant principal is supposed to drop in on classes once, twice, 3 times a week. Apparently that never occurred here. I'm not sure about his background at this point in time. I just don't know that. I don't know if they should have done a further background check. But we do know that there were incidents in his background that probably should have sent up a red flag to investigate him further. So there are a number of things that I think we'll uncover down the road. That's why our complaint is very general. I think that's the best I can answer now.
Mr. Owen, is it 8 lawsuits and 3 alleged victims? And what is the ultimate goal of this lawsuit?
Okay. We've filed for 3 victims now. We intend to file more lawsuits next week. And we have 2 goals. As I told you, these kids are severely damaged. They're going to need care for the rest of their lives, probably. Some won't, some will. That's going to require money, finance. So let's face it, in a civil lawsuit, the way they're compensated in our system, money damages. My job, I represent them. I need to maximize that recovery because we don't know what's going to happen to them. The second part is we can change things. We really can. What I hate about this is I wish we lawyers weren't necessary. I wish when this occurred, companies or schools would simply do the right thing, but they don't. For example, if you have a Ford vehicle that's defective, they won't fix it until they have 3 or 4 lawsuits that cost them several $1,000,000, and then they do it. So here, I believe with the school system, until they get hit with a large lawsuit, they'll realize it's cheaper to take care of that case and change the system than fight them one by one.
Is there going to be a class action lawsuit? Is there going to be a class action lawsuit eventually?
This is not a class action. It would not be appropriate for a class action.
How much
Attorney,
is
would you
large
describe us in
lawsuit
general
that you
terms
said?
these
How much is a
complaints,
large
please?
lawsuit?
Would you describe us the complaints, how many they are, what are the charges, who are being accused, of what?
I'd love to. Can I just finish this answer? Sir, what was that again?
Just how much, you said a large lawsuit, how much do you estimate is the large?
You can never predict that at the beginning of the case. Remember, it depends on their damages. We don't know what they are at this point. Please.
Okay, so would you describe us the complaints? You're suing who, and what are the charges that you're
Well,
alleging?
We're suing the school system, the principal, and the perpetrators. In our system, we have to file a complaint early on that essentially is the kitchen sink. And then what happens is, as we do discovery, it narrows down. So at this point in time, we have general allegations of battery, sexual abuse, negligent supervision, and those sorts of things.
We will stop some questions now and go get the parent so that you can hear directly from him and her. And then we'll continue with questions.
Could you talk about your, to be honest with you, I missed your very opening statement. Could you talk about your 3 clients?
We're still continuing, if we can continue, maintain it, so that we can
Folks,
continue to answer
there's a question by one of your colleagues. Due respect is requested. Thank you.
Please
In the meantime,
restate
they'll
that.
get the parent.
Your very opening statement, talking about your 3 clients that have not been contacted by the investigators, and maybe a little bit about the relationship. They said that there were 10 to 25 kids that perhaps were still unidentified.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw a representative last night that said they now have 250 more pictures, and those pictures only apply to the current 23 victims. And we know that that isn't true. We know that we have 4 clients who have not been contacted by the sheriffs or the schools. And we have the evidence, we have the photographs, so we know that there are more, and I believe through the discovery process, we'll find many more. I really believe the sheriff's department and the school needs to contact by mail every single student that has been through that class. That's the only way they're going to find out.
Those pictures, the
As far as how many
that you're
years?
showing us in the pictures, those are your 4 victims, or are those from Other.
They're actual photographs of our victims.
Are the parents also at risk of losing their children because of negligence? Because they had harmed this before?
I cannot imagine how that would occur. I think they did the best they could.
Attorney, do you have an idea at this time if Mr. Byrne was using a cheap camera and then developed the film? Do you believe that he had an accomplice to take the pictures instead of him?
I haven't seen them all, but I don't know. But I can tell you, based upon other cases, I'm just going to tell you what I've seen. Oftentimes when people take this amount of pictures, they don't just have them for their own purposes. They're very valuable on the international market. There's certainly a possibility he took some of these photographs and sold them. We don't know that. We don't know if he has cans of money in his backyard, but that'll come down the road.
Great. We now have the parent with us.
could just move to the right and open up to the middle so he can be presenting. Y entonces usted,
Jessica, will you be doing translation?
yes.
Okay, Jessica will be doing interpretation to her best of her ability.
Okay, nomás acérquese un poquito.
Because I take it he doesn't want
Sí,
his face
cómo no,
shown.
cómo no.
That's correct.
He doesn't want his face shown, and so how do we address him as what?
Raimundo, you can call him Raimundo. That's his first
Father
name.
of an alleged victim?
Yes,
He
yes.
is the
Thank
he
you.
is the father of the daughter
Yes, yes.
Of Miramonte?
in the lawsuit.
In the lawsuit.
Yes, thank you. Ok, lo que va a hacer ahorita si quiere dar
So the
usted un
request has
statement
been
en
that he
español
speak only in
y yo
Spanish
le voy a
first
traducir.
and then in
Solamente va a
English the
hablar en
translation.
español primero y de ahí le voy a traducir, ¿ok?
De mucho tiempo.
Raymundo.
So he will not speak in English.
No.
He will not.
Okay.
I will translate.
Thank
You're welcome, señor. Lo de su corazón, lo que se siente de su corazón. Aquí están las personas para escuchar lo que usted tenga que decir, ¿ok? Si puede hablar fuerte porque mire todos los micrófonos.
Ok.
Nadie le está mirando.
Muchas gracias por venir, a toda la prensa. Para empezar, muchas gracias.
Y hable más fuerte.
Muchas gracias por venir a toda la prensa. Estoy nervioso. Yo pienso que a ninguno de ustedes que están ahí les gustaría estar aquí donde estoy yo. A ninguno. Y de la manera como vengo, a ninguno creo que le gustaría estar aquí de esta manera. No dando la cara a nadie. Por ver lo que está pasando con mi hija.
Y por si acaso, él no va a dar ningunos detalles de la evidencia que él tiene, de que su niña le ha dicho al doctor, él no va a dar ningunos detalles de eso, solamente está aquí para hablar de lo difícil que fue para él tomar la decisión de buscar ayuda, para poder utilizar esa información de que se ayuda a otros padres que se encuentran en la misma situación, pero no preguntas de detalles, por favor. He will not be speaking about any of the details or any of the evidence that he has been able to turn in this case, or the evidence that his daughter has given him, or any of the details. He is only here to talk to you about the fact that it was very difficult for him to speak up, and even though he has come forward, he is still very fearful that he could end up getting deported. Adelante, señor.
Quiero que los demás padres que tengan hijos involucrados, que sean ilegales, que no tengan miedo. No va a pasar nada. Tenemos a una grandísima abogada. No estamos solos. No estamos solos. Que levanten su voz, que vengan. No estamos solos. No estamos solos. Ella nos va a ayudar. Estoy seguro un 100% que ella nos va a sacar de todo esto. Nos va a ayudar, ella junto con el abogado.
¿Qué pasó con su salud? ¿Qué pasó con su salud?
Me encuentro enfermo. Tuve que ir a emergencias. Estuve en el hospital 2 veces. La primera vez taquicardia, la segunda vez nervios, ansiedad, molestia, no puedo dormir. Anoche solamente 1 hora pude dormir por todo esto que está pasando. Estoy triste, consternado.
¿Usted ya habló con su hija?
Un momentito, ahorita va a terminar. Ahorita, como digo, él no va a hablar de detalles. Todo ya, eso es parte de Discovery, pero él no va a hablar de esos detalles porque es lo que él pide para respeto a su privacidad y la de su familia. Ok, ¿cómo es que decidió buscar ayuda?
No, yo no decidí. Mi hermana, yo le hablé a las 6:30 de la mañana que iba para emergencias, me sentía muy mal para avisarle que cualquier cosa que me pasara, que supiera dónde iba. Le di la dirección del hospital y ella tuvo que contactar a la licenciada, a la abogada, porque yo tenía temor, tengo temor de estar aquí, aún así. Aún con ella siento temor, me siento agobiado. Pero mi hermana fue la que, gracias a ella, conseguimos una cita con la abogada.
¿Y por qué tiene miedo? ¿De qué es el miedo, si le puede decir a los otros padres?
Porque nos deporten, por deportación.
Okay, I'm going to translate what he has said so far, and then if you have any questions specifically as to why it is so difficult for him to be here or to speak up, he can answer those questions, as long as there are no questions in regards to what his daughter is going through. We would appreciate that. What he has just said is that he didn't want to come forward because of the fear. He is undocumented, and he's very fearful that he could end up getting deported. As a matter of fact, he's not the one that stepped forward. He told his sister that he was on his way to the hospital, and he had a couple of panic attacks and has ended up in the emergency room a couple of times. It is very difficult for him to be in this situation, and he's still fearful that he could end up getting deported. But he wants to challenge other parents. He wants other parents to be informed about the fact that they should protect their children and they should protect their rights. ¿Algo más que quiera decir?
No, pues que no tengan miedo los padres que faltan. Sé que hay más padres indocumentados que no quieren no quieren reportar que sus hijos fueron víctimas. Sé de 2 casos que no quieren dar porque son indocumentados.
He personally knows about 2 families that have children that have been victimized. However, they will not come forward because they're very fearful based on the fact that they're undocumented.
¿Nos puede decir cómo está la niña o no puede comentar sobre eso, Jessica?
Lo que podemos decir, the question is, can we say how the little girl is? Well, I can tell you, and I'll wait for him not to be in the room, but because I don't think he wants to share these details, but they have all been to see a doctor already. We're waiting for results, but this is very difficult for the family, and we ask you to respect that because they can't sleep at night thinking about what the consequences can be and waiting for those results. So we ask you to please.
But if he's that
¿Cómo ha
sick,
Let me
cambiado?
ask you, did he trust the
so
teacher?
bad, he went to the ER and everything. So how is the child who was the one who actually suffered?
Well, as I said, when he's not in the room, we'll share a little bit of how the victims are doing. ¿Qué piensa del distrito escolar, señor?
No nos dio ninguna información sobre esto. Fuimos a ver al director, no nos atendió. Nos mandaron con un oficial del sheriff y no me dieron ganas de ir. Más bien miedo, no ganas. Me dio miedo de ir con el sheriff. Lo que hice, me regresé a mi casa, triste, nervioso. Y pues no creo que esté bien lo del distrito.
When the news broke out, the first thing he did is he went to the school to ask to speak to the principal, and he was asked to go see a sheriff instead. And he did not go and see the sheriff because he's very fearful. That's his position.
¿Cómo ha cambiado su vida a partir de este momento?
Ven y siéntate aquí para que veas lo que se siente.
¿Con qué responde el maestro y qué pensaste cuando te diste cuenta de la atrocidad que estaba cometiendo presuntamente?
Es una cosa muy horrible, muy triste, muy desesperante, son muchas emociones muy feas.
¿Alguna vez el maestro te visitó a tu casa?
No detalles, no details, no
Did he
detalles.
trust Mr. Burnt, and at any time before this broke and became public, did his daughter ever come to him, or did she have any idea that she was being...
As I said at the beginning, he's not going to share any of those
Well, I mean, it's
details.
a simple question. Did he either
I
trust Mr. Burnt or
understand
not?
it's a very simple question, but it's not a simple answer for him. We're not in his shoes, we don't know what he's going through, and we're not going to answer that question. We're not going to have him answer that question.
Hablamos con el sheriff y nos dice que no hay ningún problema con las personas que están indocumentadas, que pueden reportar un crimen y que pueden estar seguras de que no tendrán ningún problema con su estatus legal. ¿Por qué se niega a ir a hablar con el sheriff?
Porque hay una gran diferencia en solamente ir a hablar y dar información. Lo que nosotros queremos, por la experiencia que tienen estos padres, tienen que entender, hay una necesidad muy importante que todos tienen que entender. Ellos viven en una ciudad donde las comunidades seguras es aplicable. Lo que ellos ven en las noticias son personas que las detienen por manejar sin licencia y terminan en las manos de inmigración. Entonces, ¿cómo les vamos a decir a alguien que ha vivido esto por todos estos años, que es la experiencia viva de ellos diariamente, que vaya y confíe en una autoridad en la que ellos no han podido confiar todos estos años? Entonces, si nosotros nos pueden dar algo afirmativo diciendo que van a asignar un oficial que tiene conocimiento de la visa U, que sabe lo que es certificar una visa U, todos mis clientes nos vamos a presentar y vamos a conversar con la persona indicada. Pero antes de eso, no. Thank
Si
you.
puede arreglar alguna
Please
situación
repeat that
migratoria
in
para ellos.
Oh, one of the questions was, why is he fearful? He has already heard the sheriff department saying that they can go and talk to them. You have to understand, these people wake up every day to the news where they find out from a neighbor, from a cousin, someone who was driving without a license, someone who was selling ice cream, someone who was selling something out on the street, and they end up being detained by ICE because that's what secure communities applies. So if these families have, for example, some of our families have been victims of other crimes in the past. They never reported them. They never reported them because they're afraid of being detained by ICE. So how can we try to be in his shoes and try to assume, okay, go and believe what they're saying? What we're specifically asking Sheriff Lee Baca is assign an officer who's very familiar with the certification of U visas. And that's why we gave you some information in your packages, because we want you to understand that we're not asking the sheriff department to act as ICE or for them to grant the U visas. This has nothing to do with that. We are just asking you to certify that these children have been the victims of a crime, that you have done your investigation, and that the parents are going to be there to assist you. Before we get a promise, before we get confirmation that they have assigned someone who's knowledgeable with this, these parents are not going to come forward because this is what we're dealing with. Thank you.
So the word from the department, the word yesterday, the officer, man in charge of this investigation, made it very clear that this was a problem, but that it has now been rectified. Sheriff Baca put out an edict, and at no time should any parent fear that they're going to be deported. That's a direct order. So I take it that that's not good enough?
Absolutely not. That is not good enough because we have dealt with many families in the past that try to go get a certification in cases such as this, and the answer is we will not certify. And that is what we need to resolve. If anything, we want the sheriff department to learn from this as well, to assign a liaison that can understand that nobody's asking them to act as a federal authority and grant a U visa here. And so that you know, a U visa was written by Congress specifically to protect people such as this, people that have been victimized and who are undocumented and cannot speak up because they're afraid. They are asked to take a step forward and say, authorities, this is what happened to me. I want you to investigate this crime. And once it has been investigated, they're not asked to even refer the case to the district attorney's office. That's not what the U visa requires. However, many of these certifications are being denied, and the answer is, oh, the case never went to trial. Oh, you know what? We never caught the perpetrator. That's not what the U visa requires. We need someone who's knowledgeable, someone who's going to be able to sit down with us and who is going to be able to know what a U visa is, and that we're not asking them to act as agents of ICE or asking them to act as agents of USCIS, because we're not asking them to grant these people protection. All we want is for them to pursue what needs to be done.
How many families fit
Sorry
that
to interrupt.
category?
We have one more panel that the attorney Owen would like to present to you all,
Are we
and then
done?
we will conclude the press
Abogada,
conference, the formal press conference.
Una última pregunta.
Sí.
Si él nos puede decir de qué parte de México es y si ha tenido contacto con autoridades.
El cliente no puede decir nada de eso. Okay, let's
Go
go.
ahead, Mr. Owen.
Sí.
Please, could you put
The last poster.
Abogada, requiere una notificación por escrito de parte del sheriff Lee Baca.
Absolutamente. Nothing else will be accepted. Thank you.
Okay.
So written
Attorney Jessica Dominguez will be back for one-on-ones after this concludes.
All right, the last thing I would...
To the microphone.
The last thing I'd like to discuss with you is, over the last several days, we've had county officials who've come forward and they've told us that they have compassion for these victims and they want to make it right for them. And I agree, we should. In doing this for 30 years, there are essentially two ways of doing this. So I had this little chart made. I just didn't realize the writing would be so small. There are two options LAUSD has at this point in time. Option number one, which I think is the right thing to do, is to go to early mediation, which is where we go in front of an impartial judge, perhaps a retired person. We sit down and we come to a resolution of the case. That doesn't traumatize the children or the families anymore. Option two, which I believe is the wrong thing to do, what occurs in that sort of thing, and it's not very nice. We drag the minor and the victims, their families, through years of litigation. We subject the minor victims and their families to depositions. We probably would have 15 lawyers in these depositions grilling these children. Subjecting minor victims and their families to voluminous amounts of discovery and document production. They would find medical records. They'd ask for the intimate details of their lives that really have nothing to do with this case except traumatize them further. At this point in time, I don't know if anybody knows this, I represent one little boy. And once this came out and the neighbor children found out that this happened to him, they started calling him really horrible names, taunting him. He stayed inside of his room and hasn't come out. So if the case resolves early, perhaps we can limit that and it won't be in the news each and every day. One last thing, that's okay. As they indicated, as the school district indicated, they want these children to be able to move forward, and an early resolution would put that. The last thing that would, if we didn't resolve the case, would mean a trial. And while I love litigation, it's what I do for a living, it's horrible for most people, and it's really horrible for young children. So I'd like to challenge the system to come forward and do the right thing. I'd like to do it quickly. I'd like to do it within the next month. So my personal phone number is 661-799-3899. I invite somebody from the district to call me, and we'll hire a retired judge and get moving on this. Thank you very much.